Yes, the United States has supported India in its push to have a permanent seat in the UN Security Council. Yes, in fact, US President Joe Biden has reiterated the need for a comprehensive reform of the UN body to reflect the contemporary global realities. This endorsement has come after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden held bilateral talks on the sidelines of the Quad Summit in Wilmington, Delaware. India has been eyeing a permanent seat in the UN Security Council for the past several years, citing its contributions to peacekeeping missions, growing global influence, and being the world's largest democracy. So is it time then to now seal the deal and reform the UN's most crucial decision-making body? That's the big question. Joining us to decode it is Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist. We also have Alok Bansal, foreign affairs expert, live with us. Jayant Krishna, senior fellow CSIS, in fact, India. Is also with us live. Also joining us is Dr. Monica Verma, international affairs expert. Welcome all of you. Thank you for being with us today. Gautam Mukherjee, let me begin with you first. A big backing once again coming in from the United States of America. They voiced their support before too. But what do we make of this new steadfastness in their resolve to be with India as we strive to get a permanent seat at the UNSC? Gautam, can you hear me?
Is that for me?
Yes, Gautam Mukherjee, for you.
Yeah, well, I think America has reiterated this several times, and it's good that in his final meeting with Modi, I think before the elections, Biden has once again reiterated that America's support is there. But then what use is it with 5 people with vetoes? America and Britain and France may well agree, and even Russia would like to but cannot, and China will point blank not agree. So we're back to square one. This veto of the 5 powers after Second World War has more or less stymied the UNSC, and it neither allows it to be expanded, nor does it allow anybody else to have the same privilege. So, thank you very much, America, but it's cosmetic. Uday.
Alok Bansal, what do you read into this backing by the United States of America for India at the UNSC? Very soon, of course, the United Nations General Assembly will also be addressed by dignitaries from multiple nations. It is a time for the UN to look inwards, to hope for reform within the UNSC. What do you make of this backing that has come in on this trip as well of the Prime Ministers to the United States of America from Joe Biden?
While US has been supportive of expanding the UN Security Council and India's membership, it has not been so, I think, unequivocal. This is actually an unequivocal support for India's membership of UNSC. But please remember, in 2004, a comprehensive committee was set up to reform the UN, which had come up with its suggestions, which had given 2 alternatives. One of expanding the permanent membership and one for semi-permanent membership for some. So that proposal had come, which moved nowhere actually. As far as other members of the permanent members of the UNSC are concerned, I think even China has not explicitly ever opposed India's entry. In fact, I remember distinctly in 2005-2006 when Pakistani Prime Minister was in Beijing, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson had said you can't deny 1 billion people a place at the UNSC. So I think a permanent seat in the UNSC at the moment may not be opposed. At that point of time, we were actually bargaining for it as a part of P4. We had 3 other members, that is Japan, Germany and Brazil. And besides that, we had said that 2 membership for African Union. And I think various people were being opposed. There was a coffee club which had come, which was trying to oppose it. So that's been the thing. But how to go about it, I don't really think that UN General Assembly will vote for that sort of a thing, and how it will move forward. It's going to be a complicated issue. And even when they were talking of a permanent seat, they were talking about non-veto wielding permanent membership. Now, is that desirable, not desirable? There are both pluses and minuses. I am of the firm view that even if they offer you non-veto wielding permanent membership, I think it's worthwhile. That will take it as the first step, and then we can subsequently bargain for who can wield the veto. That is what my view is, but how we'll go forward from here, will the reforms take place? It's a big question mark at this moment.
All right, let me in fact take that to Jayant Krishna as well, senior fellow, CSIS India chair in the US. Jayant, as far as of course this backing for India is concerned by the US, it's not new. But of course, it comes at a very, very crucial time. It comes at a time when the Global South's voice is being heard much more by the world. What does this, mean, this steadfastness in their resolve for India to get a permanent seat in the UNSC? What does it really mean? What are its ramifications going to be again?
So I think President Biden has supported this time India's permanent membership of Security Council. As far as US as a country is concerned, this is not a new move at all. But it's also realized US is going for a presidential election, and there's a sizable amount of Indian diaspora that lives there. So this could also be a messaging to them that, look here, I care about country of your origin. But let's look at the larger picture. If India, the world's most populous country, is not represented, the fifth largest economy not represented, the fastest growing economy not represented, and India accounts for almost 1/7 of the global population. So I think it's a shame, and US also has to do some soul searching. They have to look within. What is their relevance in the global scheme of things today? A lot of people are talking about US needs to reinvent itself. Look at the Gaza war. Look at the Russia-Ukraine war. And look at what UN has been able to do. And to my mind, nothing very meaningful. So I think UN needs to reinvent, and by not having such a large country represented there, I think it's a shame actually. But let me also tell you that among all permanent members, China, France, Russia, Russian Federation, UK, and US, even if all countries agree, I think China is going to be a stumbling block, and China is not open for negotiation on this front at all. It has shown in the past. And who would convince China? Would US be able to convince China on this? I think that is what matters rather than anything else. So I think, and just, to broad base the issue, why just India? The fact is, entire African continent is not represented. Latin American continent is not represented. Even leading economies like Germany, Japan need to be represented, I think. So it's a larger issue, and I think we have been going in cycle, in circles and circles and circles, and nothing has come out of it. I think what in the bilateral, I don't know whether there's another round happening between US and India. I think Prime Minister Modi must impress upon and figure out that what's the way forward. How would China will be convinced on this, and how could we negotiate with China so that it doesn't veto the proposal? I think that is $1 million question.
All right, let me also in fact quickly bring in Dr. Monica Verma into the discussion. Dr. Monica Verma, what do you believe are the ramifications of this steadfast backing by Joe Biden for India's inclusion in the UNSC, and where will this backing now move the campaign to reform the UN?
First of all, I don't think that backing is anything new. In fact, in the last 10 years, since India's economy has achieved so much for itself, previous speakers have already pointed to India's growing economy, status as the fifth largest economy in nominal GDP and third largest purchasing power parity wise. I think that economic story has definitely made the world notice, especially the United States. In the last 10 years, I see it as one more sign, how India and United States are cooperating across different fronts. And usually friends, they back you up for at different platforms, at different forums. And all the United States presidents in the last 10 years, whether it was President Obama or Trump or Biden, in fact, Biden himself, last year also, he has been raising this quite a number of times that, we support India's bid as the permanent member at the Security Council, and it has also received a very, very, warm response from the Indian leadership, who have thanked him profusely, and they say that it means a lot. But then ultimately, the moot question is that fine, we know that, in the P5 we have got UK to support us. UK has also given a statement to this regard. We have also seen France support. We have seen the American support. We are also sure, that Russia will also fall on the side of India. But ultimately, when it comes to reforming the United Nations Security Council, I do not see, that those words matched by equal amount of action. Because ultimately, the reform is something that requires a lot of proactive, inclusion, and a lot of proactive efforts by all these great powers. But I don't see that happening, because ultimately, see, all of us can talk about representation of different, players like African continent, definitely, and then Japan and other countries. But what we are forgetting is that Security Council is ultimately, it's a great powers club. It was made for one particular reason after the Second World War. When the Second World War ended, then United States, played a very important role in shaping this up. It was for great power management, that if they have any issues with each other or with the management of the world at large, then these 5 countries that have the veto power will sit down, negotiate, and probably just use the veto power instead of going to war with each other. So, all the members at that time, with the exception of China, they had those credentials. But ironically, while India also was at a similar level to China, while India also had, a large population and so many other things, we missed the bus. And there is a lot of, diplomatic quarrel over it. Many diplomatic histories have been written where some people say, the government of the day was not sympathetic to this cause. They did not listen. They did not bother enough that India must have a seat at that table. And then, there's a counterpoint that says that, even if we would have responded to the offers by UK or maybe by United States, then it wouldn't have mattered at all, because these were just words again. So I think all that debate aside, ultimately these proposals mean nothing unless there is some ground changing initiative. We see reforms happening, the ball is rolled, and we see actually, some tangible thing coming out of it. Otherwise, it's a good show of solidarity. I'm happy that, Biden keeps on repeating it at every forum. The next US president who's going to come after November, I hope that person will also do that. But then ultimately, when it comes to taking that seat or making noise for it or doing a campaign for it, the responsibility entirely lies with the Indian government.
Yes, coming back now to you, Gautam Mukherjee, on, the voice of the global South. Now, how important is this for it to be heard? And do you believe finally there is a change in the way the Western world looks at the global South? Are we finally witnessing changing dynamics, changing geopolitics, particularly in the last, 5 years?
I think, Uday, there is a strong possibility that there will be change, mainly because, again, China has got a lead in terms of how it deals with Africa. They have gone in pretty much like an imperial power and are exploiting the Africans, and many of them are very unhappy with early treaties that they have made with the Chinese, where their minerals are being taken away and the compensations to the host countries are nowhere near adequate. Russia used to be a good partner of the Africans, and it is possible that after the Ukraine war is over, they will once again become equitable partners. But as it stands today, it is India that is championing the cause of the Africans, with especially via the G21 now and the 50-member African Union that has been incorporated into the G20. Now, it is in a way related to the infiltration and ineffectiveness of the UN. The general body has been infiltrated, and it is broken up into different, if you like, factions. Again, with China playing a large part. many of the UN bodies, UNESCO, WHO, etc., again infiltrated by the Chinese and taking biased stands. The UNSC is moribund because it's always 3 against 2. Sometimes, well, I haven't seen an instance where it's 4 against 1. And the veto powers are, nobody can break this unless they mutually agree to, and only in the unlikely event that the Western powers are able to bring enough pressure to bear on China can this be changed. And there is some thought, and I think some of the other panelists have hinted at it, that there is some degree of real politics and public relations, diplomacy and real politics tend to differ. And it may be that the powers that be, the UNSC powers, are just mouthing things that they don't really mean to change. It is an anomaly that Britain and France should be in the UNSC because they are declining powers. They are not economically rising, whereas India is. But that's another story for another day. As far as African inclusion, I think, or African emphasis, even in the UN, I doubt there will be very much, but via the G20 and in interacting with the G7, there is every possibility that there will be greater participation led by India on behalf of the African Union. Uday.
Yes, let me also get an Alok Bansal. Alok Bansal, this campaign to reform the UNSC, how much traction now do you believe it will get with this US backing that has come in? And where does the campaign now go ahead in the next couple of years? How can India further our interest to finally reform the United Nations Security Council and make it more reflective of the changed world that exists today?
See, we need to be cognizant of the fact that when United Nations came into being, at that point of time, they did not wish to repeat the mistakes that League of Nations had made. So they thought it shouldn't fail. But I think it has reached a situation where it has actually become like League of Nations. It's not able to stop any conflicts. The conflicts continue unabated. And as Gautam said, he's not seen 4:1, but if you remember the last resolution against Israel, it was 3 voted against Israel, 1 abstained and 1 opposing it, that is the US. So it's not that there has not been 4:1. All sorts of permutation combinations as far as UN Security Council are concerned have been seen in UNSC at different stages, and that will continue. Now the fact is that the problem is if we go with other members as we had gone last time with P4 and something, there are strong oppositions. Like in India's case, you have Pakistan, which is firmly opposed to India's entry. Brazil was being opposed by Argentina. Germany was being opposed by Italy. Ideally speaking, if you actually want to have a representative body, both France and UK should be removed and replaced by EU. So EU would represent the entire Europe. You could have an EU membership in this UN Security Council, have US, Russia, China, India, and maybe a country from Africa and Brazil. Something like that would probably represent UNSC better. But I really don't know how to move forward, because General Assembly, to take the General Assembly together, you will have to get African nations on board. African nations will have to decide. Within Africa, there is no unanimity as to who should represent Africa. Should it be African Union or something like that? That sort of a body representing UNSC, that's feasible. But to my mind, it gives us a strong impetus to revive the process, because earlier, as I said, Secretary General had set up a committee to decide UN reforms. That committee, after sitting for so long, it had so many members in that think, had submitted a report which came, I think, in 2004 or 5. I'm not recollecting the exact year, but it had very clear-cut recommendations as to how to reform United Nations, but they could never be implemented. So I suggest now that we have an impetus, I think we should take it forward, keep the pressure on. We need to keep the issue on the agenda. It shouldn't go out of the agenda so that it again gets derailed. So that should be the aim. I think we have to create a campaign globally. The UN Security Council needs to be reformed, otherwise UN will go the League of Nations way.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously the UN would not want that, would they? Let me get you in here, Jayant Krishna, on whether the West finally is waking up, smelling the coffee and listening to the global South, and the US backing again. Does that only prove that? But what does this US backing mean for a possible reform of the UNSC? Is that still a distant dream, or can we see it happening in this decade itself?
See, I would reckon it is still a distant dream, unless when US backs India's entry as a permanent member in Security Council, it has to show the way that, how will it happen? How will it see the light of the day? Unless that happens, it'll just just a gesturing. US has done it in the past, and it will. And the same cycle would get repeated. I think it's very important from another perspective that, if you look at the entire global South, India has become the strongest voice of the global South.
I think we lost Jayant Krishna there, unfortunately. Let me get in Monica Verma. Monica, distant dream according to you, or an increased possibility now with the growing clamor for India's position at the UNSC?
I still find it a very distant dream, and I have already said previously as well that this is nothing but a cosmetic measure by a declining power. In the last 10 years, there have been a lot of adjustments that the Americans have made, but then at the same time, you also have to assess that when it comes to India's core interests, there's also a significant amount of pushback. Like the same visit in which Biden has endorsed India's bid to become a permanent member at the UNSC, in that same visit, on the eve of this visit, they have also invited certain Khalistani leaders. So I think there are, if they are trying to, accommodate to the changing reality, that, like you also said, smelling the coffee, of course, they have smelled the coffee that, the world has changed. It's not 1945 anymore, it's 2024. And there are bigger powers which are emerging, especially the Asian power calculus has changed significantly. But then at the same time, I think there will be this tussle between, trying to hold on to the status quo, but then at the same time give such statements time and again. They make us feel good about ourselves. They definitely, raise our spirits. And 2 or 3 days in the entire media, I can see this will be discussed and we'll be happy. And we will applaud the American leadership for endorsing our dreams and our ambitions. But then ultimately, the brute reality of the world is that it doesn't work like that. Ultimately, everything is tangible power, it's hard power. So for Indians, I'll give the advice that Deng Xiaoping had given to China, that it's a time to hide our ability, bide our time, sit down, work on our economy, make sure that our vital stats are absolutely fantastic. And once we have that sort of power that we can leverage, then UNSC seat is just a small gain. There may be much more on the table for us.
Yes, Jayant Krishna, are you back with us? We lost you earlier. Please complete.
I'm there.
Yes, please complete your point. No, we'd lost you earlier. You'd frozen. Please complete your point.
No, so all I'm saying is that, India today has emerged as the strongest voice of the global South, And if you look at the permanent members of Security Council, China, France, Russian Federation, UK, US, nobody represents global South at all. So it's so ironic that there is no voice of the global South which accounts for such a large chunk of the world, and all the more reason that India should get into the UN Security Council. But I think important thing is what, as bilaterally, we must discuss with US that what's going to be the way forward. Otherwise, n number of times it has been said in the past and it doesn't lead you anywhere, So what is the way forward? How do we complete that complex loop? How do we ensure that the resolution to the extent doesn't get vetoed by China or possibly by Russia? So I think all these things need to be sorted out. Otherwise, it will be, status quo would remain, and nothing is going to change on the ground. That's very important. I mean, it's all good to say we are the largest country by population, fifth largest economy, or third largest by purchasing power parity, fastest growing economy, the voice of the global south. But who cares? I mean, if there is no consensus, if China can't be persuaded, and China is a country with whom you can't negotiate at all. I mean, it is very no country in the world has been able to negotiate issues with China, whether there are geopolitical issues or there are economic issues or strategic issues. Nothing, absolutely. So how does, unless that part of the riddle is solved, that part of the puzzle is solved, I think nothing is going to change on the ground. That's my apprehension.
Okay, where do we take this campaign next, according to Gautam Mukherjee? And of course, as far as this decade is concerned, do you see reform happening, or do you believe that's still some time away?
Well, as far as the UN goes, I think it is probably going to keep on losing influence because, the American attempt to starve it of finance has been replaced by the Chinese pouring in money and therefore controlling more and more activities in the UN, more and more policies of the UN, and more sections of both the General Assembly and elsewhere. As far as the African Union and G21 goes, I think there is great hope for the future, mainly because India on a bilateral basis is already making progress with a number of African countries in a variety of ways. Now, the Europeans and Americans are likely to come in behind India to support it on a more inclusive basis, which is the Indian style, because after all, their history with Africa has been that of colonialism and exploitation, very similar to that of China. So, they are hesitant. Now, Russia, because it was communist, was different in terms of how it acted with the Africans. But the Chinese are communist only in name. They are very capitalist in their attitude and very exploitative, and they want to outdo the colonials every day. They threaten every country in the littoral. They threaten us. They, even their allies or so-called people who are under their thumb are really under the lash. So the big white hope, if you like, is that the Chinese economy has imploded and is likely to remain that way. I was just listening to something on the business channels. $1 trillion is waiting in the sidelines, wanting to invest in China, but unable to do so because the whole of the Chinese stock market is in a shambles. Money is coming into India as a consolation, if you like, even though as far as the West is concerned, our rates, our values are very high right now, but still there's very little else to do because we are a big economy, which ASEAN isn't. Any of the others in the emerging market are not so big, not even Brazil. So India is going to be the leader of not just the global south,
yes,
but a leader of a good deal of the world as it keeps on growing. As Monica Verma just said, she used a Deng phrase.
Yes.
That keep your head down and keep growing. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
India's style in any case is not predatory. So we just keep growing and we will have the influence and people will see the light because there is no option.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.